Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming and speaking to us. I think it's important that in this very divisive era that we're living in, that we have healthy conversations, and I think we've been pretty good at that so far. But I must be candid with you. I definitely disagree with both of you on a lot of things. But ultimately, I look at this presentation you have of brainwashing, and that really talks to truth and credibility. So I think when we think about voting and elections, I think it's important that we have a dialogue about 2020 and the results of it. I mean, President Trump has stated, as well as J.D. Vance, that they did win that election, and they're continuing to make that statement. And on top of that, there's this great sense of conflict, and I'm sure that's true for many independent-minded folks like myself, where Republicans are coming out and saying, we don't support Donald Trump, and not just random Republicans, but Mike Pence, Bill Barr, Adam Kinzinger, many other Republicans that are a key part of what makes the Republican Party what it is today. So I just would love to have a dialogue with you about that.
Sure. I'll hand it off to Tulsi. As an independent-minded voter, though, I encourage you to simultaneously look at former Democrats running for the presidency that are joining Trump's campaign. And you would agree that's equally interesting, right?
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And I must say, by the way, thank you for your service, Tulsi. It's been great, seeing all the work that you've been doing. And my grandfather was in the Air Force, so I appreciate, all that good work. But so I guess that's an important question, is what is it that makes you switch from the Democrat to the Republican, knowing that these, fake elector schemes had happened and the denial of the election? I mean, how do you reconcile the two?
Yeah. For me, always, even before I ran for Congress and all the way through to today, I've always been an independent-minded person. My interests have always been for the country and the Constitution and the people first, ahead of any partisan affiliation or politics, which is why during my 8 years in Congress, I was President Obama was in office for the first 4. President Trump was in office for the second 4. And I pissed off my own party when President Obama was in office because I criticized some of his policies when they were warranted. And similarly, when President Trump was in office. He and I don't agree on everything. He knows that, and I know that. We agree on the most important things, though, and that, to me, is really what's at stake in this election. To address the Republicans that you called out who are supporting President Trump, when you look at the through line through all of them, they are part of the warmongering elite uniparty of Washington, period. And they see Donald Trump as the biggest threat to them because he doesn't bend the knee to their interests and to the military-industrial complex.
Well, from what they've stated to us, and what I believe is actually more accurate, to respectfully disagree, is that there's this issue of, for example, Donald Trump saying, I want to suspend the Constitution, I want to be a dictator on day one, essential pieces of democracy and the American freedom that we have.
Yeah.
So these fake elector schemes that happened, that we know happened, right? And we know didn't actually take place, these, mass voter fraud things that happened. These Republicans are actually talking about the democracy at stake.
No,
and
this
these
is
important things.
interesting. So we believe that's all just bluster and cover, and I'm going to try to prove it to you.
Please do.
Okay?
I'd love to.
Can you find a single person that has gone against Trump that was a Republican that is against the Ukrainian war?
That is against the Ukrainian war. Let me think about that. So I don't believe they are against a peace deal, but they are...
Can I go a step further?
Yes.
That is not an enthusiastic supporter of sending arms to Zelensky.
Well, I mean, I don't believe that establishes whether or not... I mean, that's an incorporeal
It's not a
thing that
gotcha,
you're
but let me
talking
tell
about.
you what Tulsi's
I mean, it kind
saying.
of is, but go ahead.
That's okay. So our belief system, and it's rooted in fact, is that they will cherry pick about Trump exaggerations or things that are widely misrepresented. Not a good use of our time to go through all that, because let's go more macro.
Sure.
Because foreign policy is really why they hate Donald Trump. Foreign policy is the life force of an illegitimate uniparty in D.C.
But, I mean, at its core, though, wouldn't you all agree that the division within the Republican Party has been a large part, a result of the aftermath of 2020? I mean, January 6th.
There isn't division, though. You have a couple defectors like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger that aren't even part of our worldview. Liz Cheney is now going around saying she supports Roe versus Wade. She was never a Republican. I mean, so the point being is you can, yes, talk about these people that might have previously been installed, but here's what's happening. Is you're seeing Bobby Kennedy's and Elon Musk's and Tulsi Gabbard's join the Republican Party, and so we're gaining addition of people that are more like-minded, and we're subtracting those that were never part of us in the first place.
There's 2 points to the criticisms that these people are bringing up against Donald Trump and that Kamala Harris is touting on the campaign, which is they say President Trump is a threat to the Constitution and a threat to democracy, right? That's at the core of what your question and their argument is. Kamala Harris does not believe in free speech, period. She does not believe in free speech. She has advocated time and again for the censorship of speech that she believes is misinformation, disinformation, or hate speech. Tim Walz believes the same. They've said this explicitly. Kamala Harris does not believe in freedom of religion. As a U.S. Senator, she voted against a judicial nominee that was before their committee simply because he's a devout practicing Catholic and a member of the Knights of Columbus. She talked about this. You can go and look at her comments. Democracy. This is coming from a Democrat party that tried to get Donald Trump's name off the ballot in over 32 states. How could they believe in the protection of democracy when they are trying to take away voters' rights for us? They can disagree with how people vote, but every one of us has a right to be able to cast our vote. There are many different examples that prove that they do not believe in the Constitution and that their very actions are undermining our democracy, which points out the hypocrisy of their whole argument against Donald Trump. What this really comes down to, and this is important in the last 12 days, 11 days of this campaign, Kamala Harris has given up on debating and contrasting President Trump's actual policies on issues and resorting to name calling because she knows when it comes to border security, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to the cost of living, unfortunately for her, over the last 4 years, she has no record to stand on.
Well, I'm just going to make one last point because I appreciate your candor and your opinions. I disagree with the conclusions that you make, but I think we both equally and fairly get to those conclusions. Here's what I'll say simply. I think that if you are going to vote for a president of the United States, the core thing you have to think about is when I vote for that president, will my vote remain protected and insured? And when you're seeing in these multiple Republican-led states a result of the Donald Trump fake elector lie and the election was stolen lie, there's a lot of stymieing of the right to vote. You're seeing polling places closing in Georgia. You're seeing a limitation of access to water in Georgia as well. You got a lot of voter ID laws. We even got a voter ID statute that's going to be potentially passed.
I got to cut you off.
So
tell me why you're against voter ID.
Absolutely. Great question. So you have to start first with those that have the most difficult time going and voting. For example, native tribal folks. You have poor and disenfranchised folks. And when you create a voter ID law, first of all, in the state of Nevada, there's already multiple ways to verify your identification. And I know this because I was trained as an agency of the registrar. And so I understand that at the back end of this, there's a lot of verification that goes on. And this is true for many other states. But when you include voter ID as well, you're adding an additional barrier to those individuals.
Should I have to show an ID to board an airplane?
You should have to show an ID, yes.
So why do we want to secure the identity of those on airplanes but not those that cast precious votes?
Well, there's a difference between a privilege and a right, as you stated yourself. And there's a privilege
to
take
agree.
an airplane.
But don't you agree rights are more important to protect than privileges? So it actually works in my favor. Rights you should secure a lot more than privileges.
Actually, not in the instance that you're speaking of, because when we're using an ID, it's about the verification of who's paying for the flight and things of that nature. But when you talk about
no,
voter
it's not.
ID
That's
law,
not correct. A third party can pay for the flight. Why are we doing identification when you board an airplane? We want to make sure that you are who you say you are.
And
so we do that. Why? So that you don't have fraudulent identity, or that you're not on a do not fly list, right?
Yeah, right. But what we're talking about at its core, as you said, the difference between a right and a privilege, what we're talking about is that these individuals who are going to go and vote, there are many other alternate ways that aren't as limiting.
Last question. Have you ever met a human being without an ID?
Have I ever met a human being? Yeah, there's multiple homeless people on the street that I've had the privilege of meeting and helping at food.
How difficult is it to get an ID?
Pretty difficult. In the state of Nevada specifically, you need 2 forms of identification, including the original birth certificate, which folks born in like the 50s and the 60s, they're going to have even the 40s and the 30s.
No, we're talking about 2 different things. Voter registration and getting a voter ID is super easy. It's 5 minutes or less.
It's not in the state of Nevada specifically, because that's what we're here at. We're in Nevada. It's way more difficult, and I encourage you to do your research on how to get the ID here. Maybe it's different in where you're at, but in any case, I'll let you speak.
No, it's fine. Thank you. I think it's astonishing that in order to rent a movie, board an airplane, in order to even sometimes get a dinner reservation, you need to prove identification. But to vote, we don't care to secure identity, which I think is outrageous.
Yeah.
So.
One last point I will make on that is that many of these. We can move on if the crowd's
Yeah, let's
not
go to the next
happy.
question.
So,
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it.